The world didn't stop for my collapse. It didn't even flinch. One moment, I was grocery shopping on a dull Tuesday, dragging a half-broken cart through the frozen section at Alvarez Market. The next, I was face first on linoleum, gasping for air that wouldn't come, my left side numb like it didn't belong to me. Aneurysm, 25 years old. No warning. They told me later I was lucky, that if Mrs. Ramirez from the flower stall hadn't called the ambulance right away, I wouldn't have made it. That I should be grateful. I was. I am. But not for the reasons they think. I was in ICU for 6 days. Monitors beeped like metronomes. Nurses whispered in tones too gentle for real life. My hair was greasy and stuck to my temples, my body wrapped in tubes, compression socks, and guilt. I'd never been this still before. Even as a kid, I was always doing, working, fixing, earning. Mom came once, cried a little, told me it was God's way of reminding me to slow down. She left before my lunch tray came. Said she had errands. Dad didn't come at all, but Clara did. Once, my younger sister, golden child of the family, fluttered in with a new handbag and almond milk in hand. "Oh my God," she said, blinking at the wires attached to me like I was an appliance. "You look like really bad. But I guess you're alive, so yay?" Then she asked if I still had the password to Netflix, because her new place didn't have Wi-Fi yet. I should have known then. 10 days after collapsing in a grocery store aisle, I was discharged with a walker, a stack of prescriptions, and strict orders not to exert myself. I took a lift home, trying to remember if I'd left the heat on, worrying about the fern I'd named Ted who hated cold drafts. The driver helped me to the door of my apartment. I was halfway through thanking him when, I realized my key didn't fit. I blinked, tried again, jiggled it, nothing. I pressed the buzzer. My name, Lina Miles, was no longer on the list, but Clara Owens was. I banged on the door, weakly at first, then harder. I was sweating through my hoodie, my knees buckling. A neighbor peeked out, then ducked back in. Finally, it opened. She stood there. My sister, in my robe, holding a mug that said, "Don't talk to me till I've had my coffee." The same one I'd bought at a gas station in Arizona on that road trip I took solo. "Lina?" She blinked, eyes wide with theatrical surprise. "Oh, you're home." "I live here," I said through cracked lips. "Why doesn't my key work?" "Oh, right. Yeah, about that." She stepped back and motioned inside like I was a stranger at an open house. My living room was rearranged. My couch was gone, my bookshelf emptied. There was a yoga mat rolled out, and an actual ring light set up in the corner. "I needed space," she said. "And you weren't coming back anytime soon, so Mom said it was fine." "Mom said it was fine?" "Yeah, I mean, technically your lease is up next month, right? And I'm subletting." "Clara, you moved into my apartment." She sipped my coffee from my mug and tilted her head. "Temporary. You can stay too, obviously. We'll figure it out. But maybe not in the main bedroom, because I already moved my stuff in there." My legs almost gave out. I sat on the edge of a footstool, mine, because there were no chairs left. She'd sold my dining set. That's when I noticed the suitcase by the door. Not hers. Mine. Packed. "You packed up my stuff." She shrugged. "Just the essentials. The rest is in storage, I think." The days that followed blurred into humiliation. I called the landlord, He said the lease had been reassigned under emergency proxy because Clara said I wasn't coming back. She used my hospitalization as proof. We thought she'd want family nearby, she told him. The utilities were in her name now. My name had been quietly erased. It took everything not to scream. But I didn't, because I knew something she didn't. 2 years ago, when I moved in, I bought a rent-to-own agreement with the previous tenant, who was a friend of mine. The landlord allowed it unofficially, as long as the rent kept coming. And it had, from my account. All the improvements, the security system, the oven replacement, all paid for by me. I had the receipts, the agreement, the email chains, the documentation. Clara thought she'd won. She thought I was weak. She didn't know that I never stayed down long, and that I always kept my paper trail. I didn't. Tell her I'd be back. I didn't fight. I didn't scream. I didn't argue with the landlord. I didn't go crying to Mom, because all of them, every single one of them, had already decided I was the disposable daughter. And because I knew, people don't see quiet as dangerous until it's too late. The next morning, I left the suitcase untouched and checked into a nearby motel using a debit card I'd kept secret since I was 19. I'd started saving in college, a little each month, stashed from tutoring jobs, odd gigs, bonuses. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I sat on a lumpy twin bed, pulled out my laptop, and started digging. First, the lease reassignment. I'd never seen a signature page. And when I requested a copy from the landlord, he sent a PDF that made my breath catch in my throat. The signature above my printed name? Not mine. It was Clara's. Forged, with the kind of lazy loop she'd used on permission slips back in 10th grade. I knew it like my own handwriting. She hadn't even tried to disguise it. My stomach knotted, but not with fear. It was something sharper, colder, like a string being pulled tighter in my chest. I downloaded the file, then opened my receipts folder. Every Venmo transaction from the past year, tagged rent, oven install, water fix, security setup. I'd paid every dime. Clara had never even visited the place before March. I clicked open my photo roll. A screenshot from the friend who gave me the lease, dated 2 years ago, with the note, "Remember to get this notarized once you finish the 12-month mark. You'll have first rights to renew." She hadn't just taken my apartment. She'd tried to steal my signature, my credit, my legal right to live there. 2 days later, I went to visit Jeff. Jeff was my old college friend, a lawyer now. Corporate stuff, mostly. But he'd always had a soft spot for messes. He looked at the lease, the payment trail, and the forged document with a grim kind of smile. "You want to fight it?" "I want to bury her in truth." He leaned back. "This isn't just a property dispute. She forged your name. That's fraud. If you wanted to press charges..." I didn't even blink. "She used my medical emergency as leverage to steal what I built." He nodded slowly. "Then let's build a case. The thing about Clara is that she only knows how to win loudly, performatively. She makes drama her stage. She talks over people. She posts every meal, every outfit, every fake act of kindness, like she's auditioning for sainthood. But I know how to win quietly, and quietly wins permanently. Over the next week, I let her think I'd disappeared. She posted Instagram stories from my couch, with captions like, "Fresh start, new place, new peace. Your vibe attracts your tribe, and I'm finally free of bad energy. She blocked me from her stories but forgot that our cousin Michelle followed us both. I watched every one of them from the motel, documenting timestamps, photos, and tagged brands. I watched her wear my clothes, eat from my pantry, even show off a custom art print I'd bought in Barcelona. She even listed my air fryer for sale on Facebook Marketplace. I had screenshots of all of it. When I felt strong enough, I went back one final time. She was surprised. I could see it in the way her mouth tensed before she smiled. "Lina, you look so much better. Are you back? I came to pick up something." "What?" I held out a piece of paper. The original agreement, signed by me and the previous tenant, notarized, first right of renewal, enforceable. Clara took it, skimmed it, then shrugged. "Yeah, but Mom said—" "I don't care what Mom said." Her eyes darted. "It's just a place." "No, it was my place, my money, my name, and now, my lawyer." I handed her another envelope. This one had Jeff's card and the notice. She had 72 hours to vacate or face a formal lawsuit for tenancy fraud, property conversion, and unlawful occupation of a rental unit. She looked at me like I'd grown horns. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." "You can't do this." I just set up the lighting in the second bedroom." "Good. You'll have somewhere nice to take your mirror selfies. Somewhere else." She called Mom in tears that night. Mom called me screaming. "You're ruining your sister's life. She trespassed and forged my name. She thought she was helping. You've always been so rigid." I paused. "Funny. You only call me rigid when I finally stop letting you all walk over me." Click. It was just the beginning. Because the apartment wasn't all I planned to take back. Next up, the family trust Clara thought didn't exist. The SAU. One Mom and Dad never told her I controlled, because they assumed I'd never use it. But when people show you they don't see you as family, you stop protecting the family name. There's something deeply clarifying about betrayal. It clears the noise, sharpens the edges of people you once loved unconditionally. You stop remembering holidays and bedtime songs. You start remembering who left you in a hospital bed to rot, while they picked out throw pillows with your emergency contact listed as inactive. And that clarity? It makes revenge taste less like anger and more like justice. 2 weeks after Clara moved out, not willingly, not quietly, but legally, I moved back in. The apartment smelled like lavender disinfectant and guilt. She'd left half her wardrobe, which I bagged and dropped at a local consignment shop. The staff didn't blink when I said the items were unclaimed. Clara didn't even bother to change the Wi-Fi password. I logged back in and scrolled through her saved browser tabs. One was titled Influencer Brand Starter Pack. Another was How to Get Free PR Packages with Low Follower Count. She'd been trying to build a brand, using my space, my backdrop, my suffering, but my revenge wasn't going to be petty. It was going to be permanent. The family trust wasn't something I'd asked for. It was a relic from Grandpa James, a man who distrusted everyone, including his own children. So he left the power of disbursement to the most responsible grandchild at age 25. That grandchild was me. I hit 25 3 months before the aneurysm. No one in the family really knew what was in the trust. Not even Mom. Grandpa had been secretive to the end. But when I contacted the estate lawyer and reminded him of my activation date, he sent over the full document with an email subject that read, "Congratulations. Trust release in effect, $386,000, mostly in assets, some in cash." tied to old properties, vintage stocks, and a dividend-paying account under my sole authority. It had been quietly growing for years, and now Clara's name was nowhere on it. I didn't touch a cent. Not yet. Instead, I crafted an invitation, a dinner, at tea, a restaurant they couldn't afford without me, La Maison Verde, where our parents used to celebrate anniversaries they now pretend meant something. I reserved a private table for 6. Invited Mom, Dad, Clara, Uncle Henry, and Aunt Louise, the core crew of performative family dinners and performative family judgment. I told them I had something important to share. Clara walked in first, draped in a cheap silk dress she'd tagged as gifted, but definitely wasn't. "Oh, so you are still talking to us," she said, sitting down like she was hosting. I smiled. Tonight's special. Dad arrived stiff, always half apologetic for being absent, but never present enough to apologize. Mom air-kissed me like we were actresses backstage at a community play. "Lina," she said, tight-lipped, "you look much better. Really. And this place is extravagant?" Uncle Henry raised a brow. "We celebrating something?" "Yes," I said. "An inheritance." Clara froze. I handed each of them a printed packet, 1 page, clean and bold. Effective April 8th, 20XX, Lina Miles has assumed full control of the James F. Miles Family Trust, per Clause 6B of the enclosed document. All asset decisions are now at her sole discretion. There was a moment of stunned silence. Then, "Wait." "What?" Clara said, already pale. "I thought Dad was the executor," Mom snapped. "He was. Until Grandpa replaced him. Quietly. With me." "Why you?" "Because I didn't use other people's emergencies to steal their lives." Clara flinched like I slapped her. "I didn't steal anything. You forged my name. You tried to take over my lease. You told people I'd be in recovery for months when you didn't visit twice. You rented out my guest room on Airbnb." "Clara," Dad cleared his throat, "maybe we should discuss this in private? Like you discussed telling me I was too intense to deserve nice things? Like you all laughed at me behind my back for not being fun enough? For not posting enough? For not being Clara?" No one spoke. "So here's what's going to happen," I said calmly. "The trust remains untouched, for now, but none of you are entitled to a cent. Not Clara, not Mom, not anyone who stood by while my life was stripped for Instagram reels." Mom's lips parted. "Sweetie, I'm not your sweetie. I'm your safety net. And I'm done being unappreciated." Clara started crying. Not sobbing. Crying. The kind she always did when the consequences caught up. The kind where she still expected someone to swoop in and protect her, but no one did, because they all knew this wasn't a tantrum. This was me removing the net. As dessert arrived, I paid in full with the trust debit card, legally mine. Then I left without hugging anyone, without lingering for false apologies. I walked out into the night air, clean and sharp with spring. I didn't feel cruel. I felt clean. I never wanted to be feared. I just wanted to be seen. For years, I thought, if I stayed quiet, if I stayed responsible, if I stayed useful, they'd eventually notice I was holding the foundation together. That without me, the cracks would show. But when I got sick, they didn't just let the house fall. They moved into it. The restaurant dinner became legend. Not because I screamed, not because I humiliated anyone, but because I didn't. I stated. Facts. Presented paperwork. And then I walked away. And that was what haunted them. The control. The calm. The fact that no matter how they spun the story, online or to the cousins or to each other, I had receipts, legal titles, and silence on my side. Back in the apartment, I opened a window. The breeze smelled like rain on concrete. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a crime scene scrubbed clean. So I started over. First, the couch. I donated what Clara left behind and bought a vintage teal one with deep cushions and brass feet. Then I painted the bedroom, dark forest green, like a place you could hide in and not be found. Then came the lock change. Not the code, not a simple bolt, a full security system with facial ID, an auto lock at night, and a message that flashed on the app every time someone got too close. You are not welcome here, Clara texted once, 2 days after the dinner. I think you overreacted. I was just trying to find somewhere safe to land. You've always had things together. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't respond. She wasn't apologizing. She was just mad her plan didn't work. Mom called too, left a voicemail where she tried to sound reasonable. You've always been different, Lina. You never needed much. Clara's fragile. She just wanted to feel loved. Maybe you can find it in your heart to share. Share. As if I hadn't shared every breath of space they'd ever allowed me. As if I hadn't lived in the basement of their expectations while Clara slept in rooms lined with praise. Instead of replying, I focused on something else. Something quieter. Deeper. I started looking into the old properties buried in the trust. One in particular caught my eye. A small, aging house in Bellwood. A town 3 hours away, tucked in the hills where no one ever bothered to visit. It used to belong to Grandpa's sister, left behind in probate, untouched since 2014. No mortgage, just taxes. Forgotten. It was a shell. But it was mine, and for the first time in a long time I thought, maybe I could build something, not just rebuild, build differently. I made a plan, sell the apartment, take the equity I'd put in, use the trust to legally reclaim my name, refinance everything under a new LLC, and start again. But this time, not in anyone else's shadow. No more backup plans for other people's mistakes. No more insurance policy for their recklessness. I filed the paperwork, quietly, efficiently. By summer, the apartment would be listed. By fall, I'd be gone. And Clara, Mom, the whole chain of inherited entitlement, they wouldn't even know where I went. One morning, I visited the Bellwood property alone. It was overgrown, with vines curling around the porch posts like time had tried to pull the house into the earth. The windows were cloudy, but when I stepped, inside, it smelled like old books and silence. I stood in the empty hallway, closed my eyes, and for the first time since I'd collapsed in that grocery store aisle, I let myself cry, not because I was broken, but because I wasn't anymore. The revenge had already happened. What came next was something stronger, redemption. Not for them, for me. The Bellwood house creaked with every step I took. It was the kind of creak that came not from weakness, but from memory. Like the walls were testing me, waiting to see if I'd treat them better than the last people who lived here. I moved slowly, deliberately. I'd never owned something this quiet before. Not just real estate. Peace. No one knew I was here, That was the whole point, until they did. It was a Sunday when Clara showed up. I'd just finished pulling dead ivy off the porch railing when I saw a dusty blue car crawling down the gravel road. My stomach knotted before I even saw the driver. That slow, tentative pace. That was her brand of guilty arrival, unsure, but entitled enough to show up anyway. She parked crooked, got out in platform sandals like she'd forgotten where she was. "Lina," she called, as if we were meeting for brunch. I didn't wave. She walked up the porch like it belonged to her too, like she always did, stepping over boundaries with a smile and an excuse. "I didn't know you were here," she said, looking around like she was casing the place. "Wow, rustic. It's not listed online," I said coolly. "How'd you find me?" Her face twitched. "Mom." She said she tracked the change in the trust address when the estate forwarded mail. Of course she did. I didn't invite Clara, and I let her sit on the porch swing while I stayed standing. That was the first line drawn. "I wanted to talk," she said, her voice soft, playing sympathy like a familiar key. "I've been thinking a lot, about everything, about how things happened." "Which part?" I asked. "The forged lease? The stolen apartment? Or the dinner where you cried because you didn't get paid for it?" She flinched. "I made a mistake, okay?" I panicked. "I thought you were going to be in the hospital forever. I thought I had no options." "You had me," I said flatly. "And you took from me instead." She swallowed hard. "I know, but that's why I'm here. I need your help." There it was, the real reason. "I'm behind on everything," she said, voice cracking now. "Rent, credit cards, even my phone bill. I'm trying to build something, I am. But it's like every door closes, every opportunity vanishes, and no one wants to help me anymore. You lied to everyone. I tried to fix it. No, you tried to frame it better." She didn't deny it. Instead, she looked down at her shoes. "Mom said maybe you'd consider helping me get back on my feet. A small loan, or if there's space here." I actually laughed. Not a cruel laugh. Just tired. "You think I'd let you move in here?" She looked up. "You have the room, and you've always been better at—" I held up my hand. "I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your fallback. I'm not the sturdy staircase you climb when your tower falls." She opened her mouth. "I watched you sell my things," I said, my voice colder now. "I watched you film videos in my living room, pretend it was your place, post captions like manifestation works, while I was learning how to walk again. You didn't think about me then." Clara's eyes welled. "And I didn't care." "You have money," she whispered bitterly. "You're sitting on a trust fund. You don't even need all this." That's when I stepped closer. "This isn't about need, Clara. This is about respect. Something you've never once shown me. Not when I let you borrow my clothes. Not when I helped you through your breakup. Not when I didn't tell Mom about the pills. And especially not when I was lying in a hospital bed and you saw my absence as an opportunity." Tears slipped down her face. "You're not the victim here," I said quietly. "But you are the reason I finally became the main character in my own life." She stood up suddenly, like she couldn't bear to sit through another minute. "Then I guess I'll go," she said, like it was noble. I nodded once. "You should." She paused halfway down the steps. "Will you ever forgive me?" I looked out at the hills. at the rustling of trees that didn't care what we'd done to each other. "I don't know yet," I said. "But I know I won't forget." Then I turned and went inside. And this time I didn't look back. I didn't expect to feel relief after Clara left, but I did. Not the bubbly kind. Not the kind you toast with sparkling water or dance barefoot to in your living room. It was quieter than that. A kind of release you feel in your jaw when you finally stop clenching it. A kind of exhale you don't notice until it's done. For the first time in months, I slept without waking to imaginary footsteps at my door. The next few weeks passed in the slow rhythm of something healing. Mornings started with black coffee and paint-splattered overalls. I scrubbed the Bellwood floors, sanded down windowsills, planted lavender by the mailbox. I replaced rotted planks with wood I picked out myself at the lumber yard. No contractors, no Instagram-worthy progress shots. Just work, real and mine. By the end of May, the house had shape. So did I, until the package arrived. It was a thick manila envelope, no return address. Inside, a bundle of aged legal documents and a single handwritten note on yellow paper. "Lina, this wasn't meant to be hidden from you. Your grandfather left more than money. Ask your father about the grant account and why your name was removed from it when you turned 17. It's time you knew what they kept from you. Someone who owed your mother more than silence." My throat tightened as I read it twice, 3 times. There was no signature, no hint of who sent it. But the handwriting wasn't unfamiliar. Tight, sharp letters. Lawyerly. Tucked behind the note was an old banking contract, stamped 2006. The header, Educational Endowment Trust, beneficiary, Lina Miles. Initial amount, $120,000. Purpose, university education, housing, medical. Emergencies frozen until the age of 18 unless withdrawn by guardian proxy. And handwritten in the margin, under amendment authorized by Alan Miles, father withdrawal date, May 2008. Amount withdrawn, $119,325, no note. No explanation. Just reassigned to Clara Owens, emergency care tuition. I couldn't breathe. I was 17. That summer I worked double shifts at the diner, thinking I'd save for college. I remembered applying for scholarships late. At night, cramming for the SATs, tutoring kids in our neighborhood just to scrape gas money. I remembered Mom crying behind closed doors, saying we'd figure it out. I remembered Dad saying, "College isn't everything." And all that time, they'd taken my future and given it to her. I stared at the page, feeling rage creep up my spine like fire finding a fuse. This wasn't just Clara. This was them. All of them. Protecting one daughter by robbing the other. And they never planned for me to find out. I made a call. Not to Clara. Not to Mom. To Jeff. "You said if I wanted to push further..." He cut me off. "What did you find?" I told him everything. He was silent for a long moment. Then, This isn't just civil anymore, Lina. This could fall under financial abuse. Misappropriation of funds. If your dad forged that proxy, and if the trust was misused, we sue? You can, but it won't just be a suit. What then? It'll be a war. The next day, I mailed a certified letter to my father. Inside, a copy of the document. Highlighted, annotated, a single sentence scrawled beneath. You chose her. Now answer for it. They took my health. They took my home. They took my education. But now I had the paper trail. And I was done being the daughter who stayed quiet. The letter I sent arrived on a Thursday. The call came on Sunday. My father's name flashed across the screen like a ghost that still hadn't realized it was dead. I let it ring until the last vibration cut through the silence of my bellwood. Kitchen. Then I answered. Lina. He breathed, like he hadn't stood silently at Mom's side for the last 25 years of my invisibility. I read the document, I said, before he could speak again. Long pause. You don't understand how complicated it was. That sentence was the anthem of my childhood. Anytime I asked why Clara got new shoes while mine had holes, or why I was expected to share a room while she got her own, why Clara had a car at 16 while I was taking the bus to 2 jobs, it was always complicated. But I understood now. It was never complicated. It was just easier to love her. Tell me the truth, I said. Why did you do it? He sighed. She needed help. You were always capable. I was a child. She wasn't like you. She was fragile, I snapped. Is that the word you always use when you mean selfish but don't want to admit it? He went quiet again. I didn't know. The money was locked that way. Your mother told me it was flexible. That trust was mine. Don't you think I've paid the price? Oh, so you feel guilty now. That's your currency? I'm trying, Lina. No, I said. You're cornered. He didn't deny it, didn't cry, didn't beg, just breathed. I have nothing left to say, I told him. You had 17 years to show me I mattered, and 7 more to fix it. You didn't, and now you'll deal with the consequences. He said my name again. Small, broken. Lina, please, don't drag this through court. We'll be ruined. I looked around my kitchen, the one I scrubbed with my own hands, the floorboards I sealed myself, the life they didn't build for me. I didn't feel like ruining anything. I felt like rebuilding from the ashes they gave me. The next morning, Jeff and I filed the preliminary motion, misappropriation of educational trust funds, fraudulent guardian, proxy signature, breach of fiduciary. Duty and notice of discovery went to my father's workplace. Another went to the family accountant. And one went, deliberately, to Clara. Because I wanted her to know that the lie she benefited from had a cost. Not just to me, but now, finally, to them. That night, Clara called. She didn't scream this time. She sobbed. You're tearing the family apart, she whispered. Over money. No, I said. Over being erased, she sniffled. You don't understand. You've always had this inner strength. And I was always the favorite, I finished. You were the favorite, Clara. Don't romanticize it now that it's uncomfortable. Silence. You never said anything, she said. You never fought back. I was too busy surviving. Then why now? I paused. Because surviving isn't enough anymore. I deserve more than survival. I deserve to be seen. She didn't call again. Jeff called me 2 days later. They're scrambling, he said. Trying to settle. They want to avoid court. What's the number? They're offering 50 grand. I laughed. Then I said, no, I didn't want their money. I wanted my name restored. I wanted every record corrected. I wanted a public statement from my father admitting what he did. And I wanted a clause ensuring Clara never touched another cent of my trust, or any future family asset attached to my name. I wrote it all down, and when Jeff read it back to them, my father cried. Not out of regret, but because I wasn't his insurance policy anymore. The settlement didn't go quietly. My demands weren't just financial. They were truthful. And truth is the one currency my family never knew how to spend. When the statement went public, shared through a legal firm, notarized and filed, my father lost his job. Not because of me, because of his signature. A forgery with consequences. The press release was clean, clinical. Mr. Alan Miles, former fiduciary proxy for the James F. Miles Trust, has formally acknowledged misallocation of restricted educational funds belonging to his daughter, Lina Miles. A full reversal of all associated financial decisions has been authorized. The estate will now be solely administered by Ms. Miles. Clara didn't speak to me again after that, but she did post a 3-minute video titled, "What It's Like to Be Betrayed by Family, My Truth." She cried. She called me cold, said she was trying to heal, and begged viewers to stop the hate. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I had my name, my peace, my truth, and that was louder than any curated tragedy she could film. What no one saw, what I didn't see coming, was what came in the mail 2 weeks later. A package, small, untitled, no return address. Inside was a photo. It was my mother, younger, laughing on a beach with me in her lap. Tucked into the frame was a note. "I fought for you more than you know." But they didn't listen to me either. I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. I see you now, Lina. I always did. I turned the photo over. The handwriting on the back wasn't Clara's. It was my mother's. Signed, Love, M. For a long time, I didn't know how to feel. Grief isn't always for the dead. Sometimes you grieve the version of someone you needed, and never got. I wasn't sure if the note was recent, or old, or planted by someone who wanted me to remember softer days. But for once, it didn't matter. I wasn't chasing explanations anymore. I stayed in Bellwood, turned the house into a quiet studio. Started designing resources for women leaving toxic homes. Free templates, trust guides, silent empowerment tools. All of it under one name, Reclaimed. It spread faster than I expected. One post turned into a page turned into a movement. Women like me who had survived their own kinds of erasure, who weren't angry, they were done, and I saw them. The way I once wished someone would see me. Sometimes people ask me if I miss my family. I tell them, I miss having one, but not them. Because blood may bind, but betrayal is a blade, and I finally stopped bleeding.